I'm a big fan of statement walls and I love using wallpaper, but sometimes my walls have texture on or I don't quite have the budget. So in this chapter, I'm gonna show you how to make a painted wallpaper treatment using just a sponge brush. I first did this project in a loft at my house. I had a blank wall staring at me, so I grabbed a sponge brush one day and just started dabbing on it to create the pattern. I'm excited to show you guys a more refined version today. We're calling this project intermediate because it's not difficult, but you definitely want to do all the steps. I'm a big fan of eyeballing, but in this one you're going to want to make sure that your guides are straight, so your pattern stays straight across the entire wall. A wall like this will probably take an hour, but honestly, take as much time as you need. Once your pattern starts shifting in one direction, it's hard to rewind, so make sure you're following your guides. The supplies we'll need are paint. You can use any color. I usually like to use a flat finish, a 4-inch foam brush, or whatever brush you want to use to create your pattern, a paint tray. You'll need painter's tape and a tape measure, and a level to make sure they're straight up and down. And then you'll want to cover your floor so you don't drip any paint on it, and then a piece of cardboard so you can practice the technique. So I'm going to grab the paint and mix it up. I really like this pattern, but depending on the colors you use, if you wanted to go with a darker color, it would be a lot more graphic. I'm doing this pretty green sage color. I'm just going to pour a little bit into my paint pan. And the paint pans are important for this because you don't want to get too much paint on your brush. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the technique. You're going to want to practice this before you take it to the wall. What we're going to be doing is creating dashes at a 45-degree angle, and we'll have a guide on the wall to make sure you stay straight up and down. And you can usually get about 4 or 5 dashes, and then you're going to want to dip again, wipe off your brush, and then start your dashes. This is one of those projects that I like to do a few and then step back and make sure my dashes are not going too straight or the angle is not changing too much on the dash. You can always correct it. For me, a project like this, I like the irregularities, so I don't worry too much about the lines between here being too equal. This is one part that I do just eyeball, but if you wanted to get a ruler, you could measure between each lines, but that would definitely turn this project from a 1-hour project into like a 5-hour project. So this is why we're gonna practice, because you can see I put too much paint right there, so it's starting to drip a little bit. Not good. So just make sure that you don't have too much paint on your brush. So I dip, and then I like to brush it off twice to get the right amount of paint, and then I take it to the wall. And if you get a dash mark that doesn't have enough paint, you can always go over it, but it's hard to correct the drips. After we do one side, we'll want to create a reflection on the other side. And you'll have a piece of tape running down the center as a guide, but I'm just trying to work on my dash technique right now. I'm a pro dasher. Okay, that looks good. Once again, step back, make sure it looks good. I went in a little bit too close there. If you have any of those mistakes, you can A, call it character, or B, you can go back with the wall color at the end and just touch it up. In this house, the walls are actually concrete. So there's this seam right here, which is a natural stopping point. And I wanna make sure that I get a full dash. So I'm gonna measure out 6 inches, and then I'm gonna keep measuring 6 inches all the way across the room, and then I'll go back and add full tape lines all the way from the top to the bottom using a level. I'll measure 6 inches, and then I'll tape. And I like to go right to the center. And then I'll go 6 more inches and add some tape and keep going across the entire room. I'm sure there's way more graceful ways to do this, but I like just to create a little tape bracelet, get a few pieces started, and that way you can just cruise. Look at this! Perfection! Okay, I totally planned that. Boom. And what are the chances that the window is gonna be perfect too? Away. And then we'll tape below the window. And then I'm just gonna finish up taping up the wall over here. So now I'm gonna extend these all the way up and all the way down to make a guide for your dashes. And then I'm gonna measure 6 inches off the wall up here and start my tape line. And then just let it drop. So it crosses over this line, all the way down to the floor, and then I'm gonna grab my level and make sure it's straight up and down before I stick it to the wall. So we'll go up here, and at 6 inches, this is where we'll attach the tape to the wall, and then drop it down. Make sure it runs across this center piece, and make sure everything is level before you stick it to the wall. Putting on the last piece. And a couple of thoughts. If you have a really tall wall like this, getting a buddy to help you will make it a lot easier. And never trust your walls. Even in a new build, they're usually not gonna be level or plumb. So you're gonna wanna step back and just make sure visually your lines look straight up and down. If you need to adjust anything, do this now before you start painting. Everything looks really straight, so now we're gonna take the paint and put it on the wall. So remember, you're gonna wanna dip it in, brush it off a few times. We're gonna start in this corner and go at a 45-degree angle and start our dashes. You can see my angle's starting to go a little bit more than 45, so I'm gonna start correcting it just slowly and bringing it back. I like to stay close to the line, but not necessarily hit it. That way you won't get a cut off dash. Okay, looks really good. Not perfect, but that's what you want. And now I'm gonna do the other side. So I like to match up so it creates almost an arrow. And just create a dash, a mirror image dash. And remember, if you mess one up really bad, you can always go back and paint over it with the wall color and redash. All right, one down, and I'm gonna finish the rest of the wall now. We're gonna skip this one that we use as a guide, and this one's gonna be the new center of our arrow. So we'll start going down on this side, and then we'll do the reflection on this side. And this is definitely where I put on my favorite podcast and zone out. It's very therapeutic to do this. This is my favorite kind of DIY. We're just doing our final few dashes. And now we're done. Now we're gonna pull off the tape. Cue tape pulling montage. Have fun. The painted wall treatment is done, and I brought everything into this room. I just love how the design ties it all together. In this chapter, I showed you how to make a painted wall treatment using a sponge brush and dashing on the wall. If you do this pattern or another one, I can't wait to see how it turns out.